Can people see my screen?
No, I can hear you, but don't see a screen.
Okay. Yeah, the little box says waiting for people to see your screen. Not sure what we're waiting for. All right, let me try again. Stop. Start.
It's still not grabbing.
Oh,
Okay, now it's there.
it is now?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. We decided to add this year because it seems like I've had a bunch of people request demos for the turning movement module, which we have embedded in Jackalope. And so I thought it was time to re-show it in users group. It's been a few years, I think. And there have been some additions, so let me go over those. I'm trying to minimize the meeting viewer. Hold on. For some reason, my GoToMeeting is not behaving. It's okay, I'll just work around the thing. Should I record this meeting, Laura, or can you do it?
Yes, I'm recording, so go ahead.
Okay, cool. All right. So there are some steps, like you can't just run out and go use the turning movement process right away. And I'm going to go over what those steps are. But the first thing is turning movements are counts, like our normal counts are, but they are associated not with traffic sites, but with traffic intersections, of course. So a turning movement, of course, being tracking the movement from this leg to that leg kind of thing. And so in order to run turning movement data, you actually need to have intersections in Jackalope, excuse me, to associate that data to, and so that we know how many legs there are and any other information about the intersection that we need for it to work correctly. So we have an intersection screen in the turning movement intersection management button here. That looks very similar to the traffic site. Oops, well, that's a weird intersection. It looks like the traffic site in the sense that it is has the historical stuff enabled. You know how in traffic site you can create a site split where you say, as of this date, the functional class changed, and before that date, the functional class will be the old functional class, and then after that date, the functional class will be the new functional class. It's the same thing here with intersections. There's actually four objects in Jackalope that have this historical attribute turned on. Traffic sites, of course, traffic intersections, traffic devices, which only a couple of you use, I think, and then segments, traffic segments. And they're all, we made a kind of invisible change, I don't know, a year ago or something like that, where we kind of generalized all these different historical sort of objects together. So they all use what used to be called site metadata. They now use this general thing we call metadata, which I'll show you. I'm not going to go over metadata. I'm not that cruel. But now you have, you can have metadata for traffic sites, or in this case, since we're in Iowa and they have intersections, they have metadata for intersections too, which allow you to basically completely customize what information you want in your intersections, just like you could do with sites. I want to say just like you can do, I mean just like Laura can do. She's our metadata expert, so we make her make all these changes. This is like advanced Jackalope that we generally prefer that you ask us to do, just because it is easy to kind of mess it up. So intersections look like sites in the sense that they have different tabs. The general tab where you'll see your intersection metadata here. So intersection name, in Iowa's case, they can factor their turning movement counts, so they need factor groups. City code sections, stuff that's Iowa specific. I happen to be logged into Iowa right now. And then of course the leg information. I don't know if we mess with this, or this is actual representation of what this leg looks like. But you can go in here and mess with the intersection. Let's see, we're in test, so I'm gonna mess with the intersection a little bit. So, you know, if this wasn't accurate, if this leg here, the north west leg was actually just going north, you could change it to be north and things like that. And it'll automatically dynamically change what the intersection looks like. And so this is all a bunch of information that hopefully as part of setup, we would load for you. Like you would not want to add each of your intersections one by one into the system. You wouldn't necessarily want to use this interface. So I'm going to show you a slide at the very end of this that goes over the information that really you ought to have before you can dive into the turning movement world. And certainly a mandatory requirement is all of your intersection data. So I mean, you could probably play with it just by creating one intersection and try to associate data with it. But really, to go into production, you're going to need a list of all of your intersections somewhere. Just like with traffic sites, these are mappable. You know, they have lat longs. Well, this one doesn't, but in theory they do. And they will show up on the sitemap. We're going to show you the sitemap tomorrow. And they show up as blue icons on the sitemap if you have that layer selected. You can associate documents with intersections just like you can with sites. You can schedule, this is actually a new thing, an Iowa request. You can schedule intersection turning movements just like you can traffic sites now. So in Iowa, they have various turning movement schedules, and they go and add that, combine that with their short-term count schedules and give them out to people. And if the intersection has any counts, they will show up here. We'll look at counts a little bit later. So again, the main thing probably to use this is figure out what your source of intersection information is going to be, and then we would load that for you automatically so that you don't have to do it one by one. Another interesting thing, since we've generalized all of this into just this one metadata concept here, is things like the roads and highways synchronization interface, which we're going to show you a little bit tomorrow, I think, can also be done with intersections. It's currently not enabled because we've not had a client that's wanted to do that, so we don't have any test information to actually make sure it works. But in theory, there's no difference between going and getting a site's set of information for a site from ESRI versus an intersection now, because all of the metadata has all of the information needed for that synchronization to happen. Okay, so let's move on. So that's intersections, which is step one in getting a usable turning movement program. Step two is really getting or understanding and evaluating the turning movement data that you have. If you use a standard turning movement board, like a JMAR board or something like that, then we might already have a reader for it. But it's also possible, you know, we'll have to write a reader just like we have to do with other sources of data. In the Iowa case, I think we pretty much exclusively use a reader that we created for them, which is taking an access database. They built their own turning movement program, and it produces an access database as its output. So we read that database. And in the Iowa case, there's actually multiple counts per file. So the loading really comes in two different flavors. Either you load one file that comes in, or that has multiple sites, which is what we're seeing here, or, you know, there's a one site per file, which is where I think most other people use that. So we go through the file. In this case, there's 8 counts in this one file, and you can see the status. It's never been run. How many hours is it, and stuff like that. And then there's this template, which is an iOS specific thing that sort of normalizes various count durations into a single template that can then all be treated the same way. But that's iOS specific. I don't go to that. And then you just hit load. I'm not going to do it because this actually takes a while, reading this whole database. Iowa, since I'm on that, Iowa uses individual vehicle records for all their turning movements. So these are actually pretty huge files. Every movement at the intersection has a record, so it can be pretty long. So after you load the data, you can see the data either in the intersection UI that I showed you a second ago, or we have a count list here, which is easier for me to use because I don't know what intersections have data and which don't. So just to randomly pick an intersection here. Let's pick, well, so this is a T intersection, obviously. You can see the count history over here on the left. You know, this is the most current count, 2020 all the way back to 2012. Looks like this is counted every 4 years. And you can sort of see the history across time here. If my screen were wide enough, this would actually be over here. But you can also, if this is class data, you could actually separate this into the bins that it came in as. In the Iowa case, they use a 3-bin collapsed lane passenger single unit combo. So if you just want to see the passenger vehicles, you can do that, and you can see these numbers change to match just what the passenger vehicles are, or single unit or combo. You can also go through and just do a particular time. You know, here, what time you want to see, and it'll show that particular interval right there. But the main thing probably is looking at the reports. So we have 3 reports now, and I'll show you the WIS.org. I have to go over to Wisconsin to show you that one, but this is pretty cool. So we have 60-minute and 15-minute versions of this report. Oops, okay, there it is. So this is our kind of our stock report that we did for Iowa. It has a picture of the intersection up here in the upper right. Because it's enabled in Iowa, it actually, these numbers are not the same as what you see in the screen we're just at. These have been annualized. So we're using hourly factors and then class factors and things like that to actually come up with an annualized estimate for these sections. Then the raw data is down here. If you want to see the various movements, you know, north through, east right, south through, are all right there. And there's 1 page per class plus 1. So this is all vehicles. And then there's 1 for passengers. Or if this were coming in as the FHWA 15, you would have 16 pages. You'd have the motorcycle car pickup, then you'd have the all volume at the top. Single unit and combo. Again, these are all, because it's enabled, these are annualized up over here on the screen and not down here. Let's see. A normal intersection. Let's pick out one. Yay. So this is more normal, I'd say. Again, we have history here. We have accounts, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Let's switch over to Wisconsin because I do want to show you some of the new features. Okay, cool. So in Wisconsin, they do something slightly different. So in their case, they are using, I can't remember, I think they might be JMR, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And we have 2 readers we have 2 readers. One, they have a spreadsheet that I'm going to show you in a second that they can submit into the system. And the second is just an ASCII file that is a standard ASCII file for whatever format that is that I can't remember what it is now. So the first thing when doing this interface through this thing is to pick the intersection that this belongs to. It will try to figure that out automatically based on, let's see if I can find it. Let me actually open a file. Right there. So there's a street name field in whatever this file format is called. And if that matches an intersection, we will use that automatically. But it didn't here, so you enter the thing, hit return, and then, oops, Okay. Try a different site. There we go. Oh, great. I picked a three-legged site. That's fine. Or three-legged intersection, not site. So this is the binding. So if you guys recall, in normal Jackalope, there's a binding process that basically says, okay, we have this raw data file. What site does this go to? What channel goes to what lane? You know, all of those decisions are in a process we call the binding process. Well, there's a similar question or a similar thing here.
Joe, do STH241.
Okay.
I can tell you exactly what it goes to. STH space 241.
Okay.
The space and symbol, and then W.
Yeah.
West Parnell. Yeah.
West
I'll say it.
Parnell.
So then, yeah, space and then P should get you to Parnell.
All right. Thank you. You are correct. All right. So that worked. So thank you, Laura. So basically, I don't know if you saw it, but over here on the right, it automatically tries to bind this for you. So basically, what this is in this file over here, you know, there's these labels here that. Come on, sorry, clicking issues. So we have labels. We know in the file that it thinks these are labeled as north, east, south, and then I'm assuming west over there off the screen. And so we make an attempt to bind these automatically for you. So we say the leg from the file said north, so we said, okay, this is north. So you don't have to manually go through and bind these. Hopefully it'll do it automatically. It also tries to manually bind to a class bin based on the number of bins in the file and what binning schemes you have created in Jackalope. And in the Wisconsin case, this may or may not be something you see based on how this is set up, and this is something we would talk about as part of implementation. You may see a bunch of these fields here, and this is for the spreadsheet, which I'm going to show you in a second. This is a bunch of information that you know, Wisconsin is interested in with regards to evaluating the turning movement count. You know, where there are special preschool children, etc., as well as any weather information and who took the count and any comments. So this may or may not be in your version of turning movement, depending on how we set it up for you. And then you hit upload, and it goes through a bunch of processes. Oops. I don't know. I should have let Laura do this, but forget it. Let's just pretend it worked. Then you'd see the count down here. And let's just select a count. And again, this just looks just like Iowa. There are some, I want to point out a few things here. Wisconsin had U-turns, which is not something we'd encountered before. So this diagram and the reports have been changed to indicate U-turns. So basically, if you see this weird double-headed arrow here, the number to the right is the through traffic. Oops, don't do that. This is the through traffic, and this 7 is the U-turn traffic. So this U-turns are now hand-billed in Jackalope if you set up the intersection correctly. So, and again, just like before, you can display bins. They have different binning scheme in Wisconsin, but it's similar: cars, single units, and combos, basically, as well as the times if you want them to. And this is a new report I want to show you because I think it's super cool. And we can't take credit for this report. This is essentially, Wisconsin created this report back in days of old, I guess. Or maybe you did it, Brent, recently. I can't remember the details. But essentially, so what we do is we fill out the raw data that generates this report, and then we just use a spreadsheet as a template, and then it automatically updates. But all of that information you saw on that earlier screen, some of that comes from the intersection itself, like I expect county as part of the intersection, but some of it came from the supplemental information at the bottom of the count screen, like for example, the weather information. It was wet and dry, or rain wet in the morning, and then it went to clear and dry in the afternoon. That obviously could potentially affect the turning movement information. But I thought this was a really cool spreadsheet. This also shows U-turns here in the spreadsheet. When we first started this, we did not have U-turns implemented. So one of the main reasons I wanted to incorporate this report was so that we'd have a report that had U-turns in it. But since then, I mean, you just saw. So, and then it's got a nice graphic here, and it breaks it down. It comes up with estimated 24 ATT, just like Iowa did, using factors that are actually in this report. But it goes through. It's got peak hour information. Basically they chunk it up into AM, midday, and peak, or PM, excuse me, and that breakdown. So you'll see a lot of threes, groups of threes all over the place. So AM peaks, midday peak, and PM peak. And then various summaries based on various aggregations that happen. And these are also broken out by class in some of these tabs. So basically there's a ton of tabs here that just really do a great job of visually representing this information. And again, we can't take credit for this. Take credit for this. Single units, trucks, all the way down the line. So anyway, this is a new report, and if you want to use this, we need to talk, because there are some Wisconsin specific things in here, like the adjustment factors, things like that. But it is available for you if you want to use it, with that caveat that it's going to be looking at your data the way Wisconsin wants to look at your data.
Joe, I typed into the chat window the two readers that we wrote for, commercial products that are out there. And so right now we're reading GridSmart and JMAR.
Oh, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Boy, my GoToMeeting is not behaving. All right. So yeah, let us know if you're interested in this report. I really like it. Whoops. And the fact that we didn't have to write it was super cool. That was actually the best part about it. Let's see, right here. So, and I didn't go over this, but you can view the data. This is the bin data. If I were back in Iowa, you could also view the individual vehicle record data if you wanted to. This is not IVR data, so we can't do that here, but time, bin, etc. And then each movement, east to north, east to east, east to west, etc., all the way down the line. And again, west to west would be a U-turn. So that's the quick and dirty rundown on this bad boy. Any questions before I talk about the requirements for this? Okay, we'll put it in the chat or speak up if you have a question. Let's go to the requirements. So this is basically what has to happen. The first thing is we need to communicate, because this is a fairly customized module. It's not like other pieces in Jackalope where we just expect it to work for anybody. This does require a little bit of extra hand holding at the beginning. The first thing, and probably the biggest thing, is we need to figure out how to get your intersection data into Jackalope. And so that's a discussion we'd have to have. Maybe you've got a spreadsheet somewhere, or maybe it's in ESRI, Roads and Highways, or some sort of ESRI data store, in which case maybe we could talk about doing our synchronization thing. But that's the first thing, is we need to figure out how to get intersections into Jackalope. And then we need to look at your data formats. Like Catherine just showed us, we've got two built-in, GridSmart and JMAR are our two industry standard readers, and we've got custom readers that we've done. But if yours doesn't fall into one of those categories, we'll have to talk about getting a new reader for you. And then there are some processing considerations, just like with normal normal short-term counts or whatever, we do have to consider binding things like, okay, the file just has 4 columns of data. How do we interpret those 4 columns of data kind of questions? And that has to be talked about, and potentially code has to be written to deal with that. And factoring, whether you want to factor or not, try to annualize these numbers. Depending on how that looks, there may be work there or maybe not. There's actually just a system parameter, I think, excuse me, that tells the turning limit program whether to factor or not, based on the IO methodology, which uses hourly factors to get to a day, and then it uses daily and seasonal factors to get to annualized volume, and then also uses daily class and seasonal class to get to adjust the classifications in an annual way. Excuse me. And then we could talk about historical data loading. So far, that's been tough for us because we've not found a client that just says, "Oh, here's a nice database or whatever with all of the turning movement data," or we can just write a script that just pushes it all into the system. So far, that hasn't happened. But if that is the case at your state, then that's possibly something we could do, is load all of your historical data. And that's really the rundown on turning movement stuff. Are people getting requests to do turning movements? Or I'd be curious to know, I wonder with our new GoToMeeting whether we can do like polls. I'll have to research that. But are people responsible for turning movements? And I know Wisconsin is, I know Iowa is. Are other people responsible for doing turning movements in their DOT?
I think Idaho is one of the other states that's kind of working on it, and maybe I had forgotten their reader too. Isn't it in PRN format? And it's, Laura, you might know the reader.
Yeah, Raymond
Yeah,
Raymond responded, yeah. I think you're right, we did have to do a reader for Idaho. Yeah, that's correct.
MyoVision. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's right. I do recall that. And they're of course one of the biggest with regards to automated turning movement stuff. So that's right. And so if you are using MyoVision, we do have a reader for it. There's a very specific file format you have to use. Okay, Missouri also uses MyoVision. So if you're using MyoVision and we try it, you have to talk to us first because there's like 10 different formats you can export your MyoVision data to, and we require one specific one of those 10. So, well, let us know if you're not already using it. Let us know. We can set up a meeting. We can get the discussion started about loading if you want to see that data in Jackalope. Let's see, Kentucky. Done turning movements for years in Kentucky, but so far we've never done them with a Jackalope. We just print raw data reports and pass them along. Yeah, well, let us know if you're interested. We can have that discussion. It is nice just having that consolidated one area where all of your traffic data is, and that's really what we want to be in a given state. Is we want to be the central repository for all of that traffic data, rather than having 16 disparate sort of repos out there. Bill, cities have asked about bike ped counts. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's certainly a thing. I'm trying to remember. Didn't that come up with Idaho bike and ped? I think we just handled that by having a binning scheme that had bike and ped, but I might be totally making that up. And do you know, Bill, are they getting that through MyoVision? Okay, yeah, Raymond's confirming that we dealt with bike and peds in Idaho. Okay. Okay. I'm curious, does anybody have like intersections that they are responsible for maintaining, those people that are processing turning movement data? I'm curious if anybody maintains their intersections in like an ESRI platform. Okay. Manual forms. All right, sounds good. Well, someday we'll get a state that wants their intersection data sucked out from ESRI, then we can officially support that. Okay, that's Nicholas says, I'm not, but our operations group maintains ATS PM system with continuous turning movement data. Okay. Well, I saw that was one of the things Mark showed with the streetlight information. I wonder if is that what that is, Nicholas? Something like that? Yeah, okay. I also, this is a totally different subject, but I wanted to mention regarding streetlight, we've started discussing with Christine and Ian in Minnesota, because they are one of the volunteers for the for Federal Highways for processing this data, is that we will work with you to get the data into the system. There's a lot of details that have to be handled first, like what kind of data are you interested in? Are you looking at hourly data, monthly, annual? So just to let you know, I wanted to add that to our discussion from earlier. Obviously, we will work on getting whatever streetlight data you want into the system. Okay, well, I rushed through that a little too quickly. What are we looking at here? Okay, so I'm 15 minutes early unless people have questions. Well, so 13 minutes early. Let's break a little bit early, have a little bit longer break than expected, and then come back at 12:15.